Hello everyone. This video will review the requirements for the assignment Evaluate a Resource for the course Career and Employment Resources. The instruction package that you see on the screen is available for download from Blackboard under Course Assignments and Due Dates. This assignment is due midnight Sunday, March 27th, which is the end of week 3, and is worth 20% of your grade in the course. In this assignment, you're going to perform an activity that you will be doing out in the field pretty regularly, which is you're going to look at a new resource that you might share with a client, and you're going to evaluate it using the ABCD model that is presented in week 2 of the course in the video lectures. So you're going to look for a resource to evaluate, and it should be one that you would give to a client to assist them with any stage of the 3-step career life planning model that forms really the framework, the primary framework that we're looking at in this course. The resource that you select can be a website, an assessment tool, it could be an old-fashioned book or print publication, a podcast, a video, or it could be in any other form provided that it has direct application to clients, and most importantly, it can assist clients with career decision-making and or job search. So this needs to be a resource that you're selecting that has direct application for clients who are looking for work or trying to make career decisions. You're going to select the resource, do a little bit of research and find one. Then you're going to evaluate it using the ABCD model, the framework that you're learning in week 2 of the course. And then you're going to write a short essay responding to the questions I'll review in just a moment. One thing that's important for you to note is that you cannot select and evaluate a resource that has already been used in any course so far in the program. The idea behind the assignment is to find a brand new resource that you have not seen before to add to the tools you have already learned about, and to then expand on the resources you will have to offer clients in the field. So you can't select, obviously course textbooks would not be appropriate to give clients, assessment tools that have already been done in class that you've been provided through the various courses, websites that have been provided in current or previous courses. So it needs to be a brand new resource that you have not seen before. You do some research and find the resource, and then you're going to evaluate it using the ABCD model. What you're going to do is to fill in a rating form using that model to evaluate the resource, and then you'll provide some brief comments in the form of a short essay. So let me just scroll down the page and show you more specifically what you're going to be doing. So you will, of course, do some research to identify a resource that you as a CDP could give to a client to help them with one or more stages of the 3-stage model used in the course. So, for example, if you have a client who is in the Who Am I stage, what's a new resource that you can find that might help the client in that stage? And so it must be a resource that the client can use specifically to help them with career decision-making and or job search, and that clearly fits with at least one of the stages in the 3-stage model. So as I've already mentioned, you could use a website, an assessment tool, a book, a podcast, and so on. You must be able to clearly identify which of the 3 stages the resource fits with, and what specifically about the resource fits with the stage that you identify. So you need to be able to point specifically to a stage in the career life planning model, and just as a little tip, I advise you to try and pick a resource that fits clearly just with one of the stages, just to make it a bit easier on yourself. But you must be able to say specifically which stage it fits with, and you also must be able to explain why it fits with that stage. It's very important that you be thoroughly familiar with the resource that you select. So this means if you choose, let's say, a book or some other print publication, you must have read it completely. If you choose a video, you must have watched the entire thing. If you choose an assessment tool, you must have tried the tool out yourself. So this requirement is really important because you really would not and should not be giving resources to clients that you have not thoroughly checked out yourself. So this again is kind of guiding you through the process that you must be using out in the field to find new resources that you would share with clients. And in this case, it's really important that when you're sharing resources that you have looked at them thoroughly and have a clear understanding of what they involve before you give them to your clients. And as I've already mentioned, you can't use any of the resources that you've already had given to you in any of the courses since the beginning of the program. So, for example, you cannot use something like the NOC, the Who Am I inventory. These are, and the Holland Codes assessment tools. These are all things that you've been exposed to through various courses. And this, I really need to emphasize this really clearly. This includes all Government of Canada and Government of Ontario websites. You're being provided links to those sites and many of those useful resources in this course, and we have touched on some of them in previous courses. So anything that appears on the Government of Canada or Government of Ontario websites cannot be used, even if it's a little aspect of the site that we haven't looked at. Again, the point of this is to find new resources that you have not looked at before. So do ensure that you verify once you select the resource you're going to review that it's not been provided in a current or previous course. And if you're not sure, once you find the resource, feel free to just send me a quick message and a link, and I will confirm for you whether or not we have already looked at that particular resource. The next point here is to select only one resource to evaluate and to keep it relatively narrow. So again, only one resource. Do not select two or more resources to compare. Pick only one, and if you select a resource that has a lot of aspects to it, like a website, do not try to evaluate every page and every feature on the website. Again, we want to drill down to something very specific, and you wouldn't, for example, say to a client, here, just go and look at this Government of Canada website as an example, right? You wouldn't just say, just go on that website and have a look around. You want to guide your clients to specific aspects of the website. So if you are guiding clients to a resource, you're selecting a resource that has a lot of aspects, like a website with many different features, don't try to evaluate every single thing on the evaluation form that you're using in this assignment. Pick something, a specific page with information or a tool that the website offers, and evaluate that. Similarly, if you, let's say, select a book to evaluate, do not try to evaluate every chapter. So an example of a book might be What Color is Your Parachute? Now, again, you wouldn't be able to use that because you have been exposed to that through some of the courses. But as an example, if you were going to use that resource, you wouldn't evaluate every single chapter. You would give an overview of the book's content and evaluate it using the ABCD model, or you would do a specific chapter, a specific aspect. For example, in the What Color is Your Parachute book, there's a very useful flower-shaped model. Again, you can't review that as part of this assignment, but that's an example of something you would really drill down to look at something very specific from that particular resource. Please select Canadian-based resources as much as possible. So, a website that gives you lots of information on labor market, the labor market in, let's say, Australia, could be interesting, but only for someone who's moving to Australia. So you really want to try and pick resources that have the broadest application to most of the clients that you're going to be working with here. It's also really important when you select your resource that it be readily accessible to clients without any cost, and it doesn't require the user to register or provide their email address. So really important that you don't force your clients to expend, additional funds that they may not be able to afford, or that they have to go and register and give up some of their personal information. So select resources that they can easily access, including don't select resources from proprietary databases that the public can't access. Maybe you find something very interesting using the search tool on the George Brown library site, but people out in the public can't use that site because they are not current students. So make sure that any resources that you select, that it's a one-click, it's directly accessible. Clients don't have to do any other extra steps or expend any money or register in any way. After you select the resource that you want to evaluate, you're then going to use the ABCD evaluation form, which I'll show you in a moment, to rate it on each of the criteria. So there are 4 criteria on the rating form, and those are authenticity, budget, client appropriate, design. If you don't know what those mean, they're all explained in the week 2 video lectures on this framework. And so you're going to rate the resource on these 4 criteria on a 1 to 5 scale, with 5 being excellent, 3 being fair, in the middle, or average, and 1 being very poor. You will assess the resource using each of the 4 criteria and then you will give a rating on the factors that are listed under each one. So under each of these 4 criteria, there's a more detailed breakdown of the specific factors that feed into each of these criteria. So as an example, for the criteria of authenticity, you will see that there are 6 factors listed under that criteria, and those factors are current, accurate, comprehensive, objective, balanced, and the reputation of the author or producer. So based on your assessment of the resource that you're selected, you are going to rate each of those 6 factors. And let's say you might give the 6 factors ratings of 4 to 5 on each one. And then based on these ratings, you might then give the resource a rating of 4.5. And yes, half points are allowed on the criteria of authenticity overall. Then you'll move on to the criteria of budget, consider the factors under that criteria, and rate how well the resource meets those factors. Then you would give the criteria of budget an overall rating, and so on until you've examined and rated the resource on all 4 criteria, as well as the factors under each one. Just show you the evaluation form here so that it's clear to you as I go through the rest of the instructions what this looks like. So the instructions are all here at the top as to this is the form that you're going to fill in and submit with your analysis. And all you're basically doing is filling in all of this information. Just ensure that you provide me every little bit of this detail, the resource title, who produced it, the date, the cost, if any, and so on. The length of it and the type of resource. So you're going to fill in all of that information, and then let me just show you the criteria and factors that I just referred to. So you can see that the 4 criteria, authentic, budget, client appropriate, and design, are listed on this page. And then underneath each one, as I've indicated, are the factors that feed into each of the criteria. So what you're going to do, I'll just review this again, is you're going to look at the resource and rate it first on each of the individual factors underneath the criteria heading, deciding, looking at a resource, how current is it? If it's very current, it was just released and it's got very up-to-date information, you might give it a 5. If you see something that is not quite accurate in the information, maybe you might give it a 3 or a 4. If you feel like it's missing some information, it's not totally complete, you might give it a lower rating of, let's see, 3 or 4, and so on. So once you have evaluated it based on these factors, you're going to look at all of your ratings overall on each of the factors, and then you're going to, and it doesn't have to be a mathematical calculation, but let's say you've given it mostly 5s and maybe one 4.5 somewhere in here. You don't have to, mathematically average it. You may decide, well, despite that one 4.5, I would give this particular resource a rating of 5. Okay, so that's basically how you're going to do that for each of these. Evaluate the factors under each of the 4 criteria, give it a rating, and then give it an overall rating based on what you have, how you've rated it on the specific factors. So that's how you're going to fill in the evaluation form, and you're just going to do that for all 4 of the criteria. Do ensure when you're completing the form that you do make it really clear what ratings you're giving under each heading as well as here. And you can do this a couple of ways. You can just bold and underline it, or highlight it with a color, whatever works for you. And then make sure that you clearly indicate what rating you're giving overall at the top. So just show me in some way, underline, bold, highlight with colors, something along those lines that this is what your rating is. Back to the instructions further up in this document, basically what I've just shown you on the actual rating form is what's explained here, how you're going to do the ratings. So one thing I need to emphasize here is that the resource doesn't have to receive perfect ratings. So in other words, you're not being evaluated on whether the resource is good or bad. You may select a resource and think initially that it looks pretty good. And then as you start to evaluate it, realize, I'm not so sure I would share this with clients, or I'm not so sure that it does meet all the criteria. So you're not being evaluated in the assignment yourself on whether you've selected a resource that's good or bad. You're being evaluated on how carefully and accurately you rate the resource and how well you defend your ratings. So what you're being evaluated on is the skill that you would be applying out in the field, how well you are selecting a resource and actually evaluating it to determine if it really is an appropriate resource to share with clients. Do ensure that you provide clear explanations, and I'll show you the questions in a moment, for the ratings that you assign to the resource, particularly where you are giving ratings that are less than 5. So if you rate a resource, for example, as a 3 on a particular factor or criteria, do explain fully what has led you to give that lower rating. What are the limitations or weaknesses you see in the resource that led to the lower rating? So a common mistake that students sometimes make on the assignment is they give lower ratings in certain areas, but then forget to explain why, or don't really give an explanation. Just say, it's not enough to say, I didn't think it was very good in that area. You have to say what's missing, or in your opinion, what would enhance it. So you have to provide a clear rationale for why you've rated it lower in certain areas. Once you have established your ratings, you're going to reproduce them on the or put them on that rating form, evaluation form that I just showed you, and then you're going to include that form with your short essay or short analysis and save it all in Word document. In a Word document. And please ensure that you embed the actual rating form within that short essay so that it's all one document, and you're going to submit this with your assignment. And again, just ensure that you fill in all the basic information describing the resource at the top of the evaluation form. So once you've looked at the resource and you've done your ratings on the form, and you've got that all completed, then you're going to write your short analysis based on the ratings that you've given. So the first question that you're going to answer is to state clearly which part of the 3-step model your resource fits with and explain why you think it fits with that part of the model. Again, just to emphasize, the resource must have direct application for clients that you might work with in the field, and it should fit with at least one step of the 3-step career life planning model that you are learning in the course. So if the resource you select fits with more than one stage and you make this statement, then ensure that you clearly identify how it relates to each stage that it reflects. And I'll just say again, that it is easier to respond to this question if you choose a resource that fits only with one stage or at most 2 stages. Do try to avoid selecting a resource that you think could fit with all 3 stages. It'll make it very difficult, I think, for you to do the analysis in the short space that is being allocated for this assignment. And there may be cases where it fits with 2 stages, but you feel it fits best with just one stage, then focus on that stage. And you can mention that it might have some application to this other stage, but I think mostly, for example, this is a Who Am I resource. So do identify which steps it fits with and explain fully how it fits with the steps you've identified. So another important thing to watch for here is to not just say which part of the model it fits with, but provide an explanation for why you think the resource fits with the steps that you have identified. So, for example, if you find a new assessment tool that you think fits with Who Am I, then explain why. And, the explanation might include things like it clearly helps an individual identify what their preferences are for a work environment, or clearly identifies what their interests or values might be. So make sure that you provide that explanation. And this particular question, your response could be, relatively short, just a paragraph, about 150 to 250 words. The second question you're going to answer is, why did you give the resource the ratings you gave under each of the 4 criteria? So as I have mentioned, you need to explain why you rated the resource the way you did on the overall criteria. You don't have to explain each individual factor necessarily, but if in particular factors are lower and have brought your overall rating down on the overall criteria, you need to provide some explanation for that. You must be able to defend each rating that you give with a clear rationale for why the resource has received the ratings you've given it. Even if you're giving really good ratings, simply saying, I like this resource, I think clients will like it, is not sufficient. You need to do a a little bit of an analysis to explain fully why the resource would help clients based on each of the criteria. And it's really important that you give examples of specific features, tools, or information from the resource to support your ratings. Your response to this question should be about 1 page to 1.5 pages of the 2 to 3 pages allocated for the assignment. The question that you're going to answer in your analysis is, would you use this resource with clients in the field? Why or why not? And so again, as you go through evaluating the resource, you should begin to develop a sense of, yes, I would be confident sharing with this particular resource with clients, or gee, I'm not sure I would. So you want to explain very clearly why or why not you would go ahead and use the resource with clients. And describe any limitations that might affect if or when you would use the resource. So there may be some clients, for example, that the resource would be very appropriate for, and others that it would not. If it's clearly a tool that is, let's say, targeted to high school students and young people just going into university, then that resource would have a limitation with less application likely. Let's say for someone who is much later in their career, has developed a lot of self-knowledge and career maturity, and really, would find that particular tool a little bit too basic and elementary. So that might be a limitation, and then you would identify that the resource would be good for this particular client group, but not for this client group. So having evaluated the resource, provide a clear statement indicating whether you would or would not use it with clients when you're in the field, and explain your rationale and indicate if there are any limitations to when and how you would use it. So as I've said, would you use it only with certain client groups under certain circumstances, or does it have enough broad application that it would be useful for all clients? So your response to this question should be at minimum half of a page to the 2 to 3 pages allocated for the assignment. So I've given you a clear breakdown of how space-wise you would allocate your responses to the different questions. So really pay attention to that. Your short essay covering the questions that I've just reviewed should be 2 to 3 pages in total, double space, size 12 font, 1-inch margins. Adding in the evaluation form to your essay means your total document should be 3 to 4 pages in total. 2 to 3 pages for the essay, 1 page for the evaluation form, and this does not include a cover page. You do not need bibliography. You do not need to do any other research. Please keep your responses short and respond directly to each of the questions. You do not have to include a lot of extraneous information. So the assignment should be 2 to 3 pages in total, not including the actual assessment form or a cover page. Do save your document in Word format only. And again, just a reminder to please put your name in the title of the document. When I'm marking assignments, I quite often download a whole bunch of them all at once. And if I'm trying to find, if I need for some reason to find a specific student's file and it's labeled my assignment, then I have to go and start opening those documents to see, to be able to find that specific student's assignment. So it just saves me time and just makes my life a lot easier. Please put your name in the document when you save it. And of course, don't save it as a PDF or lock it, because then I can't put the feedback in it. So do email your document directly to me by midnight at the end of the day, Sunday, March 27th. And again, just a reminder to ask for an extension if you can't meet that deadline. Here's the rubric for the assignment. So what you will get back is a copy of this rubric indicating with check marks if you have fulfilled a particular section, or providing you with feedback if there was something that was missing. So again, the assignment is worth 20 marks in total. So those are spread out between the completion of the evaluation form, the essay, and a few marks for language usage. So let me just review the points under each of these headings. If you've provided a complete description of the tool, so all of the sections at the top of the evaluation form are filled in, you get a mark for that. If you've provided the ratings on each factor under each of the 4 criteria, you get 2 marks for that. And then the overall ratings are provided on each of the 4 criteria. You get 2 marks for that. And the 1 to 5 in brackets might be a bit confusing with the marks, but what that refers to is the rating scale on the actual form. So you get 5 marks for providing all of that information and ensuring that all the ratings are fully filled in. The analysis that you're going to write is worth 10 marks, and the marks are broken down this way, that you get 1 mark if you clearly identify and accurately identify the steps that in the career life planning model that relate to the selected resource. So I'm going to go and look at the resource that you provide, and I'm going to evaluate and assess it myself, and I'm going to decide and identify which part of the model it fits with. So I'm checking to see, have you accurately identified which part of the model it fits with? So that means you do have to look at it very carefully and very thoroughly to identify which of the 3 stages it fits with. And then clear explanations need to be provided for why the resource fits with the steps identified in the career life planning model, and you get 2 marks for that point. Clear explanations being provided for the ratings on each of the 4 criteria is worth 2 marks, and examples from the resource of specific features, tools, or information that it provides in order to support your ratings, that is also worth 2 marks. So you can see that your analysis in this part of the little mini essay is worth a total of 6 marks. So it's really important that you provide clear and full explanations for each of those points. You also need to provide a clear statement on whether or not you would use the resource with clients. Even if you've said lots of glowing things up here, I would like to see a very clear statement on whether or not you're going to use the resource with clients. That's worth 1 mark. Giving a clear description of any limitations of the tool and whether it would apply to all client groups or only specific groups of clients, that is worth 1 mark. So even if there are no limitations, you can still identify, does it apply to all client groups or only specific clients? So as long as you touch on 1 or both of those points, you get a mark. And then that the resource selected has direct application and relevance to clients who are making career decisions or seeking work in Canada. And alternately, if you have selected a resource that is not Canadian-based, that you have clearly critiqued it and identified what, if in any way, it has limited application to clients here in Canada. So it's really, really critical that you look at the source of a resource that you're giving to your clients when you work in the field. And it's very easy to miss the fact that a resource is based in another country, particularly the United States. There are some very important differences in labor market information, in requirements working in specific fields between Canada and the United States. So very, very important that you really look thoroughly and carefully to see whether or not your resource has application to working with clients in Canada. So that whole section, your analysis, your mini essay, is worth 10 marks, and that should be 2 to 3 pages in your actual analysis. And then the language usage, as always, 5 marks for grammar and spelling, with a half a mark deducted for each error to a maximum of 3 marks. And then that you have met the criteria for the essay, that it is 2 to 3 full pages. Now, if it's a little bit over or under, I'm not going to worry about it by a couple of lines, but if your essay is only a page and a half, you probably have not written quite enough. If you are up to 5-6 pages, you've got way too much information, so you need to go back and edit it down. So generally aim for 2 to 3 pages, size 12 font, 1-inch margins, and again, not including cover page and evaluation form. And there will be marks deducted, a half a page for each page under 2 pages or over 3 pages, to a total of 2 marks. So that section is worth 5 marks. So that's how the rubric will be applied to your assignment. And there are tips for success, and most of these just reinforce, what you've already heard. So I'm not going to go over them in detail, but do be sure to explain your ratings fully, especially when you give a score less than 5. Just remember to pick a resource that you haven't seen or worked with previously, and just check with me if you're not sure. Try to select a Canadian-based resource wherever possible. You've already heard all about it, plagiarism. Do ensure that you provide a clear and accurate link to your resource online. I can't mark your paper if I can't review the resource, so just ensure that you give me that link. And I think pretty much everything else on this page we have already gone over in previous assignments. So that's it for this particular assignment. The last page again is the evaluation form, which we've already looked at. And so allow me just to scroll back up to the top of the document. As always, if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to let me know, and thanks for watching.